Greetings, class, and welcome here to week 11. So this week we're going to be looking at social engineering. And this is a lot of students' favorite topic because they can instantly relate to how to use this facet of hacking. And it's not always what you would think it would be. A lot of people equate social engineering to one-on-one conversation or one-on-one interaction with individuals, where it's more of an all-encompassing tool set that you can use in order to extract information from your target. So we're going to look at what social engineering is, the elements of social engineering and why it works, a little bit of footprinting, pretexting, scanning humans, for lack of a better saying there, physical social engineering, and then preventative measures that you can use in order to fight off social engineering attacks. So what is it? Well, basically it is the situational awareness, or the methodology, I should say, the situational methodology of extracting information from people. So the text kind of puts it as making use of human psychology in order to get something from someone in some way. I know, very vague, right? This may be a physical or digital attack vector. So we talked about attack vectors before, and when we look at what an attack vector is, it is a methodology or an avenue or an approach to manipulating or exploiting, I should say, a vulnerability. Well, humans don't have vulnerabilities the way systems do, but you can focus in on different aspects of human psychology, if you will, and manipulate it in that fashion. So there's a lot of many techniques that you can use to encourage people or persuade people to do what you want. So some elements of social engineering: reciprocity. You do something for them, they want to do something for you, sometimes referred to as a quid pro quo. If you haven't been living under a rock for the last few years, you kind of understand what that is in the context of the political sense, I guess you would say, in this day and age. Commitment: you get them to commit or agree to do something. They are more likely to follow through on it for you. This is all about gaining and exploiting trust. Social proof: if they see someone else doing it, then they are more likely to do it for you. So these are the different, like I said, elements of social engineering in order to get what you're targeting. Now, what you're targeting could be a password, it could be access, it could be all kinds of different things from a digital or analog sense. There are a lot of other elements to social engineering: authority, liking, scarcity. These are just a few of the definitions that the book lays out. Authority being someone who appears to have authority. This is used a lot. Name dropping is another example of that. Liking: this is more used in social media. Since we have a large footprint in social media these days, we look at dropping off or dropping names or liking people to try to gain their trust. And then scarcity: if someone appears to be scarce, meaning not highly available, it appears that they are more valuable. So why does this work? Well, basically, humans typically are trusting people, especially here in the United States. We have a culture of trust, where we put our best foot forward, our best face forward, and we want to be helpful. We're wired as social creatures in that way. And this has helped us to survive all these years in our environments. And to that context, social engineering is a way to prey on that innate human trust and characteristics. We often, of course, sometimes have tendencies um, in some areas, especially from a diversity perspective. Social engineering projects or social engineering contracts may call for looking at different aspects to target a company or individuals within a company with certain persons. We can look at the ways where those individuals are going to trust certain people the most. For example, it could be a cultural thing. It could be where someone from a certain culture would trust someone from that same culture more so than someone from outside of the culture. It could be a gender issue. It could be several things from that avenue. This goes back centuries, if not millennia, from a social engineering perspective. Social engineering comes from the, for lack of a better term, the intelligence field in order to gain information, because it's mostly about gaining information. So, a great example of any social engineering, watch any James Bond movie. That's a great way to look at that. Or any type of way of manipulation, personal manipulation. So, pretexting. This is at its core storytelling. So this is the setup, right? A social engineer creates a pretext for getting in touch with someone. This could be an overt lie. It could be um, uh, research into what your mark or your target is most likely or most interested in, and then doing some research or background on that interest, and then trying to make a connection there. And what is the story that you'll tell the victim to encourage their compliance or to start to gain their trust? So they get an example here. Hey there, Trevor, from the IT help desk. We need to make some changes, and I need to confirm your username and password. Classic, right? So we look at, when we get to talking about preventative measures later on, we'll come back and talk about this example. And have a little bit better understanding of it. Another one that is a highly, and it happens every year, the IRS. The IRS will never call you, okay? And I almost fell victim to this myself several years ago. The IRS does not make phone calls. They never make phone calls. They will only correspond with you in the mail. But hundreds of thousands of Americans every year fall victim to phishing schemes where they pay erroneous IRS bills to companies, and they're none the wiser. So that's just one example of a phone phishing scam or scheme where social engineering in the form of authority, the IRS, I mean, you don't really get much of a higher authority than the IRS, comes into play. So how do we pull all of this off? Well, phone calls, like what I gave you there. Email phishing scams. This happens all the time. The problem with email phishing scams is they explode and they die very quickly. We've gotten a lot better about identifying phishing scams and mitigating spam and killing it at the source by blacklisting not only mail servers but domains themselves. The physical access to social engineering, this you have to be really, really careful with. You see this a lot in like wireless penetration tests, where you have to have a little bit of a social engineering persona to gain access into a facility in order to try to hack into the wireless network. Um, So you need to be sure that if you were ever on a pen testing team that is doing this, you have permission from the client um, to interact socially with their staff or their employees for potential wireless access. And then there's spear phishing. And this is just a phishing campaign, but it is specifically targeted at an individual. So this is where the attacker or hacker has done their research, their footprinting greatly, and they have targeted an individual, typically somebody high up in the food chain of a company, or somebody who has specific authority in the company. There was a problem a few years back with hackers from China, in this in particular case, Hong Kong, that were attacking businesses in Southern California, and they weren't going after the CFO or the CIO. They were trying to impersonate people high up, but they were sending emails to controllers or people who they knew had access to bank accounts and trying to impersonate these folks into sending them money or to sending them wire transfers to their banks in Hong Kong. It was a really bad situation, and a couple of businesses actually fell victim to this scam. Physical social engineering, again, uh, this is people trying to gain access into unauthorized areas of a business or an organization. It could be, I gave you an example earlier on with wireless pen testing. This could just be overall physical pen test. A lot of data centers have to go through this on an annual basis. So they might have badge stealing. Someone may also try to convince a security guard to let them in because, oh, hey, I forgot my badge today. Can you just let me pass? You know, and it's a very easy thing to try to impersonate. So, preventative steps, security awareness training. So, you know how I gave you the example about Trevor earlier? And Trevor's trying to be victimized by a hacker who is impersonating someone from the help desk. Well, security awareness training, where you give examples like this and you really start telling people to question their environment, or question the person that they're talking to or interacting with, or question the email that they're getting. Other areas of awareness training is to get people to understand their social media footprint. Social media has been the Achilles heel for a lot of phishing attacks because if we put out all of this information for the world to see, we don't lock it down to only those who we want to see, then that information is available to any attacker or hacker who wants to try to exploit you as an individual. That could be from an identity theft perspective or a phishing attack perspective for your employer. Um, Encourage mental mistrust. It's okay. Be a little cynical. Be a little skeptical. Don't assume everyone out there has your best interest in mind. Um, Highly visible and effective physical security is also a great deterrent. From that aspect, we want to look at how we can deter a potential attacker. Now, this is as old as time. Banks are excellent at it. Armed guards, lockdown procedures, lockdown drills, uh, self-locking vaults, all kinds of stuff. Um, our data has to be done and managed in a similar fashion. Data centers that are highly locked down, that only people who need to get access to assets are allowed to get in and get access to assets. So, some physical controls from this aspect: badge readers, man traps, turnstiles, any way that we can funnel or control entry into a certain area. This is typically what we call a bottleneck. We want to have a bottleneck from a physical control aspect because if we can isolate an intruder at the bottleneck, it's easier, a lot easier to manage that aspect of physical security. But these three items here definitely need to know what they are, how they work, and for the test that's coming up. Biometrics is another means of physical security. So they have greatly expanded over the last 10, 15, 20 years. I remember when I used my first hand geometry scanner, and it would work maybe 20%, 25% of the time. And the other times it just, it wouldn't work. One facility that I worked at that had a data center that had one of these devices back in 1999, we actually turned it off because it failed so often. Now there are fingerprint scanners that you have on your laptops, voice print scanners, iris and retina scanners, all of these different biometric means that we use in order to further authentication of people into a facility for physical access. Now, there are problems with biometrics, like I described. So the most common ones are the false acceptance rate, which is the percentage of people who are allowed through when they shouldn't be. And then the false rejection rate, which is the percentage of people who aren't allowed through when they should be. Those are the two biggest problems that we have with biometrics. Either you're allowed in when you shouldn't be, or you're disavowed when you should not be. And they are faulty. You have um, a cold, for example, and it impacts you trying to do a voice print and you sound all nasally and you can't pass your voice scanner. You can see where that can be a big problem. You have a medical condition, you have a hand geometry scanner, and you become puffy, as I call it. You retain water, your hands blow up. These are medical conditions that can be caused by any number of things, and all of a sudden the hand geometry scanner doesn't work. So these are big problems that can be caused from a physical access perspective. So, in summarizing this chapter in this week, social engineering is the way that we make use of typical human behaviors in order to get someone to do something we want them to do against their better judgment without having them question their better judgment, I guess you could say. There are many forms of social engineering: phishing, spear phishing, physical access, and the like. Prevention can be addressed by security awareness training and physical controls. Know what badge readers, turnstiles, man traps, those types of physical controls are, and be aware of the use of biometrics and the caveats, the gaps in biometrics, like I had just explained. So that is going to cover it here for this week. Let's take a quick look here. We're in week 11. All right, so homework 6 is due. And homework 6, if I'm not mistaken, let's grab this real quick. All right, so here you're going to be doing some more work with OpenVAS's Nmap and Nmap, and updating your NVT database in your Kali box. So this is pretty straightforward. I will try to do an example of it if I don't have one already on YouTube. So it's pretty simple. So you can need to pick your choice of images from VulnHub and do a ZenMap Nmap scan of it, as well as an OpenVAS scan, and then show that you have updated your NVTs to the latest database. So I will make sure that we have a link for homework 6 here in the documentation this week. So that's it for now. I'm going to sign off. This is Dr. Brown. Until week 12, we'll see you around.